Shhh Digital Media presents Part 2 of The Butterfly Dragon, What Different Eyes See, Vietnam Special Edition, by Brian Joseph Johns.
Travel arrangements. An hour later, and the Western delegation, having collected their baggage, sat at one of the passenger pickup bays discussing their options. Just to bring everyone up to date, Werner is having his people make arrangements for our overnight here, where we'll be staying at the Oriental Jade Hotel. We're also waiting on a response from the head of the delegation in Ho Chi Minh City, so we don't know how long we'll be here yet. Werner is really pushing this, so we can expect an answer soon. Valerie assured her peers. Soon enough to leave for the hotel now? I'm sure that most of us could use a break, Dr. Briggs asked, Zhang throwing him a seductive glance. That's the plan, however, I'm waiting for a confirmation just in case there's no vacancies. Valerie's phone rang as an incoming text advised them proceed to the passenger pickup area. That's our signal. Let's go. Valerie stood, grabbing her wheeled suitcase and pulling it easily over the pickup area. The rest of the delegates followed in 3 groups. As they arrived, Alicia and Halen observed that there were several drivers, each with different signs naming specific members of the delegation to come to their vehicles. One of the vehicle's drivers indicated that Zhang, Dr. Briggs, and Bryce would accompany him in his vehicle. "Looks like we're taken care of," Bryce commented aloud, turning his smile to Zhang, Briggs, and finally to the driver in thanks. "Good timing. It's good to see this all coming together." Valerie looked around, ensuring that all of the delegation members each had transport. "I have to agree." Zhang stepped over to the car as both the driver and Briggs competed to get her door. "It's customary to let the driver honor his commitment to his passengers and to earn his gratuity." Zhang turned to address Briggs, who shrugged in disappointment in his attempt to catch her attention. As he stepped over to his door, she continued, "But don't think for a moment that I didn't notice your chivalry." Zhang smiled at him ever so seductively. Briggs' sense of defeat quickly turned to a silent victory, and his smile once again found his face by the grace of her reply despite his emotional experience. They loaded into the vehicle as Valerie stepped over to the driver before he'd gotten into the driver's seat.
"I've got this vehicle, and theirs is going directly to the Jade Oriental Hotel. Where's the third vehicle destined?" asked Valerie of the driver. Check the driver. Too much traffic, I need to go." The driver quickly jumped into the luxury D car, leaving with Zhang, Briggs, and Bryce. Valerie quickly proceeded over to the second car, where Katya and Victor were seated comfortably in the luxury passenger seats. Katya lowered the electric windows in order to speak with Valerie. "These are very nice and luxurious vehicles. We approve." Katya smiled, seeing that Victor had finally warmed up and fallen asleep. "Do you know any Vietnamese? I need to find out where the third vehicle is going. It's not listed on my itinerary here," Valerie asked Katya as the driver jumped in and drove away before Katya had any chance to answer. Alicia and Halen stood outside of the vehicle as Monique leaned against the luxury D car and flirted with the driver. "Well, I suppose I could just ask Monique to extract our destination from the driver, because nobody else seems to know where we're headed," Valerie responded, frustratedly closing in on Alicia and Halen. "Don't you notice anything odd about the vehicle arrangements?" asked Alicia to Valerie. "Other than we're the only ones who don't know where we're headed?" "No," Valerie replied. "She's referring to the fact that we're all of the women with abilities, if you know what I mean." Halen observed Alicia's point intuitively. Valerie stood with her hands on her hips for a moment, considering Alicia's observation. "You don't say," she finally responded. "Should we be worried?" Valerie asked Alicia. "Well, it could be coincidence, not to mention the fact that if anyone intended us harm, they have already had the best opportunity with the other 2 vehicles well on their way. Not to mention, we'd have sensed it," Halen reminded them. "Halen's right. I think we should just get in the vehicle before they get suspicious," Alicia agreed. "I've got news for you." Monique waltzed over to her friends as the driver stepped into the luxury vehicle. "Nice of you to join us," Valerie replied sarcastically. I'll take that head on, thank you, Valerie. So I was talking with Thuk Bang, and he told me that he's taking us to one of the grand estates on the river. Monique clasped her hands in excitement, dancing on her toes as she exhibited her anticipation.
Valerie stood motionless, clearly unimpressed. "And?" Valerie asked impatiently. "Let her finish, Hercules," Helene remarked in Monique's defense. "Well, it would seem that this particular estate houses one of, if not the, richest national in Vietnam, and that she has personally requested our audience. Now, that might not seem remarkable, but her estate has not had visitors since the Vietnam War ended." Monique spun on her toes and waved her fingers to Thuk Bang, who smiled back in admiration from behind the wheel of the D car. "Monique, you never cease to amaze me," Alicia smiled, patting her friend's back. Thuk Bang got out of the driver's seat and promptly opened their doors and loaded their luggage into the back. He then went to the front of the vehicle and drove south along Vo Van Kiet until he arrived at a turnoff near the river. From there, they followed the great river as it snaked its way through the Vietnamese landscape. Alicia did some research of her own, reading further information about the history of the Hanoi region with a focus on sorting out any clues related to their dragon-driven detour. Monique, meanwhile, enjoyed the amenities the luxury passenger van offered, including indulging herself in 2 glasses of Chardonnay while jumping around between V-pop and North American online radio, listening to music through the complimentary earbuds. Helene fell asleep as she watched the dense cityscape slowly transition to lush jungle amidst the backdrop of Valerie's voice. Valerie attempted to sort out the impromptu arrangements made for the delegation in a cacophony of hurried phone calls and text messages. Valerie's voice disappeared as Helene drifted off, and she suddenly found herself in the field of dreams of her youth. She carefully stepped through the field, searching for the estranged beast that had disabled the flight. She instead found nothing but unanswered questions. There, floating free from any mounting or wall, floated a solitary painting in 2 colors: the yellow and red stripes of the south and the red star of north meeting somewhere in the middle of the painting amidst a butterfly-shaped heart, much like the one that used to adorn her first outfit when she'd emerged to the world as the butterfly dragon. She ran her hands over the painting, reaching the lower right corner where a signature emerged as the sun crested the horizon. It read, V. Canera, Estate and Miss Hui Van. Helene awoke with a sudden stop, leaning forward in the D car seat. "We're here, sleepyhead," Alicia said to the newly awakened Helene. Helene stepped out of the van onto a great brick driveway. Her eyes followed it to the distant jungle from whence they'd arrived, back to the grand estate, which resembled a temple in terms of its design, perhaps only comparable to the Angkor Wat or the Wat Sutat and other similar architecture she'd seen in the region. Birds and fauna sounded off for the women, perhaps showing off to draw their attention, or squawking intimidatingly, attempting to scare them from their territory. Thuk Bang carried their bags up to the front door of the estate, from where it was then carried into the house by 2 custodians who'd been waiting. "Greetings. I am Ko Fa. I am employed by Miss Hui Van, the woman whose estate this is, and the woman who summoned you here. If you will accompany me, we will take you to the solarium for afternoon tea." Ko Fa, a tall gentleman at 5'10", stood just inside the entryway, his hands folded. "And now we're getting somewhere," Monique nodded to Ko Fa, slightly tipsy. "I take it we'll be getting some answers during our tea session with Miss..." Valerie confirmed with Ko Fa. "Miss Hui Van will address you according to her own plans, upon which I cannot speculate. Now, if you will accompany me..." Ko Fa led the 4 women into the estate. "Bye for now, Thuk,"
Monique blew her new friend Thuck a kiss. He smiled modestly and waved as he got back in the D-car and drove off down the brick driveway, disappearing where it met the jungle and its canopy overhead. Halen coaxed Monique back in line as they followed Kofa through the estate. The estate itself was a mixture of stone structures amidst rooms crafted with bamboo and other woods. Some of the rooms almost appearing to be self-contained structures, separated from the rest by rooms of stone or even sculpted monuments. The wooden rooms seemed to be inhabitable, living spaces, while the stone chambers were often alive with plants, vines, and other life.
Upon their arrival at the solarium, they observed a room crafted entirely of glass and casings, shaped to house an enormous stone sculpture within which a finely crafted wooden floor housed a sitting area with a tea table at its center. Several paces away and through a stone doorway, a brick oven kept a cauldron of water at a steady boil as a fountain maintained it with its slow trickle. A woman retrieved a tea kettle, submerging it in the boiling water by its handle and filling it to the brim. She then withdrew it, pouring the steaming hot water through a filter filled with tea leaves, which drained into another kettle. She then retrieved that kettle, placing it upon a tray as the four women sat at the table on the wooden floor. The lady gave each a modest cup, pouring them each a helping of fresh tea, careful not to spill a drop. She then disappeared through another door. "I am Miss Hui Van. I am the one who summoned you here. I know much about each of you. For instance, you are Miss Alicia Weston, accomplished doctor and scientist most notable for her development of the SY349. As a young girl, you were bullied by other students for your weight. You overcame your fears with the help of one of your best friends, a woman also in this room. Miraculously, at some point in your mid-20s, around the same time you created the SY349, your appearance changed remarkably and your physique went from one of mild obesity to that of an Olympic-class athlete. Coincidence?" Miss Hui Van's silhouette remained darkened as she stood framed by the afternoon sun that peered through the solarium glass, warming her back. Alicia looked to Halen and then back to Miss Hui Van.
Then there is Halen Yates, a deceivingly North American name for a former Chinese national, is it not? That's because your father, who moved your family to North America in the mid-1980s, thought it in your best interest to avoid stigmatizing you by forcing you to keep your true name, I Yuan Lin Ying. And yet, while in North America, your destiny found you despite its Eastern beginnings. There are some things from which we cannot escape, though at this point in your destiny you've embraced responsibility, still unaware of what is to come that will threaten all that you hold dear. Morgan Hind Henshi and his dojo gave you all he could at the start of your journey. Tiger Hun Kwang nurtured you in his dojang. Jin Hua in her temple kept many things from you as she did from us all. And yet, you met and befriended Alicia at 16 years of age and helped her to find her inner peace, and more importantly, her confidence. Then, in a chance meeting years later, you returned the favor by saving her from certain doom at the hands of Greer Tormund's men around the same time you consumed the SY349. Only a couple days later, a giant butterfly is spotted first in Toronto, at a nightclub, then at an airport at the midpoint between Toronto and Treadwater Island Resort, where, much the same, there are several sightings of the same giant butterfly, whom apparently works with other women, one matching Alicia's description. Ms. Hui Van continued her monologue. "This is a very good story. Did you come up with this yourself? You should be a writer." Monique giggled profusely at her own humor. "How amusing, Ms. Monique Defleur. Your life growing up in Quebec City was a troubled one, I understand. Such a lost soul you've always been, wanting to be the life of the party despite having been raised by two life-hardened working-class Canadians. Your mother, French-Canadian born and raised, and your father, Ukrainian, a skilled tradesman and newcomer to Canada, and their little daughter always looking for the next party. Your happy family moved to Toronto, and you found your party and your new boyfriend, Samias. You then left home at 19 and moved in with your boyfriend, despite his ties to Greer Tormans and criminal network. How were you to know? You were too busy working as a waitress and quickly learning that life is much more hardship and struggle than parties. Ms. Huevan's voice became intense. "Stop it," Monique said in a sudden burst of anger.
She seems to know so much about us. Are we just going to let her reveal everything? Monique spoke emotionally, wiping her face as she did. Sticks and stones, Monique. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. Valerie urged Monique, defensively and defiantly.
And then there's little Miss Business Lady herself, Valerie Aspen, the boss's wife-to-be, or so you thought you would be. But men like Tormund have many aspirations while keeping many secrets, even from their most beloved. You believed you could mold him, work him with your business craft to shape him into the man you desired him to be. That you'd be his lady, and together with his boldness and your business mind, that you'd be running Tynan and Associates. You had no idea that he had plans to buy it, and that everything he seeks to purchase mysteriously becomes devalued just before he buys it. Most people believed he had nothing but luck on his side, when in fact he was running the single largest criminal extortion racket in history, in using it to devalue public companies when he'd purchase them for pocket change and then grow them into empires of their own. You had no idea that he'd arranged for the theft of the SY349 formula created by Alicia Weston. You had no idea that he himself had consumed this formula and that it had changed him, much as it changed you when you were given the same formula. His powers of telepathy and psychopathy were only matched by your sudden, immense strength. And yet, despite your dedication to him, he betrayed you and abandoned you, leaving you to take the fall for his crimes. You were approached by the very women who defeated you, who attempted to gain information from you about Tormund's plans. You kept them in the dark, mostly because you wanted revenge for yourself, and at the same time those women ended up at Treadwater Island Resort, you also arrived, and by your own transportation. At one point, you were even videoed by a smartphone while you were hefting a 50-ton boulder as if it were a pebble. You were then cited by several guests and some of Tormund's accomplices around the same time that a small force of multinational police agents dismantled the largest criminal conspiracy in history run by Greer Tormund's employer, Alomera Zek. Now, strangely, you're directly employed by Tynan and Associates as the business manager for the Western delegation, for which Alicia Weston is also employed as director of medical research, Halen Yates as consultant of Eastern affairs, and Monique DeFleur as her assistant. Miss Huevan finished. There was a moment's pause as Valerie's tension grew, and before she finally burst. "All right, Monique, you hold her. I'll tear her arms off." Valerie's rage peaked.
Sticks and stones, Alicia quickly intervened. Don't even go there, Alicia. Valerie pushed Alicia aside easily. And yet, all of you arrived here safely, and with all of these secrets intact, Miss Huevan nodded. Then why are we here? Halen asked, the only unanswered question. Let us enjoy our tea first. Then we will discuss the matters at hand. Miss Huevan walked over to the table, entering for the first time into the light as she did. She was an older Vietnamese lady, perhaps in her mid-60s, though it was difficult to tell for sure. Her face still had the glow of youth, as if there were a spark within her that simply could not be extinguished. Her wrinkled face with age lines that merely accented her other features. Her lips were tiny and thin, yet still held their reddish-pinkish tint. Her left cheek bore a deep scar that extended from the outside of her left eye, near her temple, down to just below her mouth, as if someone had taken a sharpened cleaver and dragged it over her face. Please,
be seated and drink tea with us. It is customary, and it is how civilized people behave. You are civil, and I knew this of you. Had you not been, I'd likely already have been a crushed pulp on the wooden floor here. There are few people who can withstand the true call to violence when they're confronted by it, and the truth is that most are better at making that call itself than withstanding it. You 4 women are remarkable in that each of you has the power to wipe out armies of people, and yet you've never taken a life, and in fact have saved many more than you'll truly ever know, sometimes by the use of carefully applied violence, and always in defense, but mostly by your aptitude, intuition, and empathy. Rare are those who wield such power and restraint in midst of the call to violence, something of which I'm all too aware. Miss Wayvon casually gestured to the scar on her face. I have to admit we're at a disadvantage here. You brought us here, completely unaware, while you possess much knowledge about us. Would it not be in the interest of civility for you to shore up that difference? Halen suggested diplomatically. I, Yuan Min Ying, the butterfly, the dragon, all in one, directly to the most pertinent of the questions, fearlessly so. What Jinhua observed about you as well. Miss Wayvon responded with observation, still very careful to reveal too much at once.
Who's Jinhua? Monique asked Halen, as if she'd been keeping a secret from their friendship. She's one of my mentors, almost in the same way that I am to you, Halen responded to Monique calmly. Like Sylvia Obadiah was to me. Bryce Maxwell, too, Alicia added. You're still holding a lot. You didn't answer her question. You just sidestepped it, Valerie observed. Ms. Huet Ven sipped her tea and then continued. There are many things in this world that happen on various scales. For instance, on a stormy June night in 1971, a young woman clasps hands with an American as they run together through the rain in search of a room in crowded downtown Hanoi. She led them into a small hotel where he paid for a room. They dried themselves in the room, the American man discarding his disguise, though she'd already known of his truth. You see, this woman and this man had been in a secret affair for the previous 2 years. Ms. Huet Ven began divulging bits and pieces. Who is this woman? You? Monique interrupted. Let her finish, Monique, Alicia requested, Monique responding with a pout, still very much emotionally sensitive. On that night, amidst the sound of crashing thunder and the nearby impact of American bombs during the nighttime raids, this woman and this man made passionate love, perhaps in fear of never having had the chance to share their immense love for the other in the constant threat of death. Ms. Huet Ven continued her story. Before the sun rose, he left her. It was necessary for both their safety, and they'd made arrangements to meet the following evening, where the American man would wear disguise number 3. You see, she knew all but one of his disguises, for he'd shared much with her as she had with him. She woke on that morning, cleaning herself, before leaving for the day to her job. You see, she was a messenger. She carried important messages between a group of men in one building to another group of men in another building a quarter of the way across the downtown core of 1971 Hanoi. She did this trip several times a day on a motorized rickshaw, which was often loaded with produce as a decoy to mask her real purpose. Miss Huet Ven paused as she delicately hoisted the teacup to her lips, taking a sip before placing it back on the table before them.
On the days she'd arranged to meet with the disguised American man, she would drive her rickshaw past him, dropping a fruit within which was hidden a piece of paper. On that paper was a message. He would then open the fruit, recovering the message, and with the special tiny film camera he had, he'd secretly photograph the message. Then, he'd take the message and insert it into another fruit of the same kind as she circled the block. When he emerged out to the street, and on her passing, she'd grab the fruit from him without stopping and continue to her destination. Miss Hui Wen picked up a peeled lychee from the fruit bowl in the middle of the table and nibbled at it. "He was a spy? Were you working for the Americans?" asked Alicia astutely, as Miss Hui Wen took her time enjoying the lychee. She would take this fruit and the message within to her destination, but when she got there, she'd turn in a completely different fruit, which of course contained a completely different piece of paper. You see, things are not always as they appear. In the midst of war, there are things we do for the love of another, and there are things we do for our country. She was doing both, Miss Hui Wen answered. Monique was about to speak, and Helen put her fingers to her lips. "Shh," Helen urged Monique. On that day, she'd finished her work, and after she'd been cleared to leave, she went to meet the American, who said he'd be wearing disguise number 3. She arrived and waited. Then she waited some more. Finally, he did not arrive at all that night, and she cried, for that could only mean one thing. Miss Hui Wen wiped a tear from her face with a silk kerchief she'd drawn from a pocket on her gown. The next day, she did not go to work, nor the day after that. Instead, she fled on foot to the suburbs and found work on a farm, earning less than 5 cents a week. She worked for many weeks, and weeks became months. Soon her womb began to rise, for she was carrying a child, his child. Miss Hui Wen continued to wipe tears from her face, as did Monique and Alicia from theirs.
Then, a week before she'd deliver her baby, they came. They'd found her. They took her and put her in a hospital in Hanoi under armed guard. She eventually gave birth, the doctors and nurses letting her hold the little baby girl who was 1 pound, 2 ounces. She marveled at the wonder of the little life in her arms before they, her previous employers, came and took the baby away from her. Forever. Miss Hui Wen looked down to her lap and then back to her guests. She stayed in the hospital for another week, in severe depression, before she left, a free woman. She returned to the same farm and continued her work as the war raged on. One of the markets she used to drive through for her job as messenger had been completely destroyed by American bombs, and yet, as fate would have it, she was still alive, her love gone, taken from her. And then one day the bombs stopped, and the guns no longer echoed through the river valleys. The Americans fled, and the North had won. Miss Hui Wen continued. This time it was Helen whose eyes teared up. They came and got her again, the very people for whom she worked as a messenger. They arrived on the farm with a caravan of vehicles, and they put her in a luxury car in the back seat. She sat beside one of the leaders of the war effort in the North, her friends on the farm watching as she drove off in the car, the smell of soil and manure still permeating her clothes. They took her to the heart of Hanoi, where she cleaned up for a ceremony. Then, in front of the people of a united Vietnam, they gave her a medal and bestowed upon her several honors attained by her devoted duty to her country. She was a national hero. Yet, the only thing she could think of was him and their baby girl. Ultimately, she kept this deep inside of her, even as they applauded her for her betrayal of her one true love. Miss Hui Wen's tears flowed once again. Valerie's mouth began to twitch as Miss Hui Wen's story pierced her defenses, and a tear streamed down her cheek. How did she continue on after that? Alicia asked her, sincerely interested in hearing everything. A smile emerged on Miss Hui Wen's face upon hearing that question, and her eyebrows rose amidst the irony.
It all happened very quickly for her. She was awarded a large sum of money by the state, much of which she donated to the rebuilding of Hanoi. She took the remainder and started her own market, slowly buying other markets, one at a time, and hiring the former owners. She paid them well, too, as her empire grew. During the 1980s and 90s, she started buying beauty spas and salons, anticipating a growing tourism into the region, never realizing that, as the 90s approached,
many working-class men would also rely upon third-party grooming services. In the mid-1990s, she bought land containing the remains of an ancient temple from the government, spending much on its preservation and restoration, converting it into her home. Miss Huivon explained the remainder of her story. "And that brings us to why you brought us here," Helen asked. "You see, this old woman, she still thinks about her baby girl, and so she hired investigators to uncover the mystery of her whereabouts, if she in fact is even still alive," Miss Huivon responded. "What about him? The American in disguise number 3, Alicia asked. "If he were still alive, he surely would have tried to find the girl, his lover, from my story, and yet no such thing happened. The investigators found nothing but dead ends, all except for one, and that mystery lies in a painting," Miss Huivon finished. "By V. Canara?" asked Helen. "It is easy to see why Jinhua placed so much faith in you. You still pay much attention to your inner senses, Butterfly," Miss Huivon acknowledged. "First Jinhua, now V. Canara? Who's that?" Monique asked, shocked that her friend and mentor would keep so many secrets from her. "The painting? Where do we find it?" Helen asked, following her previous insight.
Such a painting as the one to which you refer would be a valued treasure in Vietnam. I would suggest taking a look in the Vietnam University of Fine Art, where they have a gallery. You see, this woman of whom I spoke, she wants to find her baby girl, and that painting is the beginning of the trail. This is no ordinary mystery, for even after spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, she has still not been able to find anything exposing the trail that one should pursue to reveal the truth. Now do you see why you four were brought here? Women with extraordinary capabilities who can overcome the obstacles that prevented an army of private investigators from finding her. Miss Huivon explained her reasoning. "Where do we stay? I mean, most of this investigation sounds like it will happen in the city of Hanoi itself," Alicia asked. "I have a large share and vested interest in the Oriental Jade Hotel, where some of your peers are staying. You will be welcome to stay here and at the Jade. However, given the fact that your delegation will be meeting with the Vietnamese delegates in Ho Chi Minh City in 72 hours, your time is limited," Ms. Huivon revealed to them. "Wait, we haven't even spoken with the delegation yet, much less arranged for a meeting time in lieu of the problems with our flight. How do you know all of this?" Valerie asked, retrieving her tablet from her travel bag. "Suffice it to say that I simply know, and have contacts who keep me in the know through many different channels, and that it would be far too difficult to explain," Miss Huivon assured the women. "And if we succeed, what are you offering us for our time and effort?" Valerie negotiated with the older lady. "Always following the art of business, aren't you, Valerie? Let us just say that I can offer you each something that you desire, yet you are unaware of the fact of your want or need at this time. You want us to solve your mystery, and you're offering us a mystery in return?" Valerie shrugged at her proposal. "You're right to do good by us all, but this is something I'm really intensely curious about now. I want to find this girl," Alicia offered. "Me too," Monique added, taking up her place beside Alicia.
So do I, but we can't just do this for free, especially when you know this is going to have costs for us and for Tynan, not to mention the delay it caused our delegation and all of the other people on that same flight," Valerie spoke up. "I agree with Valerie. Miss Huivon's in a position to afford an army of private investigators, amongst whom all would require some form of monetary compensation for their time and effort. If we simply did this for free for every person that could easily pay someone for it, we'd be broke in no time at all. There's a time for charity, and this isn't such a time. You're offering us nothing but speculation in return for what sounds like it is going to be a challenge, even for women of our capabilities. My heart is really for helping you find this girl, but we need more than that alone to compensate for what it cost already. Convince us why we should," Helen backed up Valerie.
As I said at the beginning of my tale, life has many different scales of existence. Some people struggle from day to day to make ends meet, yet others work from month to month managing their expenses for a family. Yet others, like Helen, are concerned about processes that affect the lives of employees. Some manage many such entities at once, steering vast empires full of people, ensuring their prosperity, or, at the very least, bearing the immense responsibility therein-for. Then, there are those who deal in things beyond your scales of imagination, like the scales of a dragon. Perhaps one whom ensured that a certain flight was damaged so as to accommodate the need of a little old lady in the woods, requiring the services of certain people on that same flight. Now you question what such a person offers you in return for solving a mystery and reuniting a mother with her daughter, one who commands dragons and deals in the powers of the world. Think of what one at a much larger scale than your own can offer you for such a matter of the heart. Miss Hui Van's presence became magnanimous, shadowing her frail body as if the spark fueling her within had suddenly come to life. I know much of you that I've shared, and only with you. Yet I know so much more so than you even know of yourselves, Miss Hui Van responded.
Helen considered what she'd told them, and thought immediately of Jin Hua. Miss Hui Van had known much about her former mentor, not to mention the fact that she spoke of both Weltherwith and Jin Hua as mere vassals of her own empire, pawns in a game much bigger than she'd imagined. If this was true, then what Miss Hui Van was offering was most certainly beyond the value of money or finances, and would indeed be something key to their fate, destiny, or path. Perhaps something that might reveal the nature of the longing within her own heart, something that had arisen from a sudden and unexpected loss many years ago. Little did Helen know, but each of the women considered their own hidden desire, that something within each of them that might somehow complete them and allow them to progress to the next level of their being. Alicia would have likened it to the stages of an ongoing research project, while Monique might have likened it to a party or a video game. Valerie to a deal or investment. No matter how they understood it as individuals, they grasped the concept of what Miss Hui Fan had to offer. It was Helen that broke their sudden silence. I agree to do this for the reward you indicated for us each and every one that helps us from our delegation on 2 conditions. That you don't keep any secrets related to our investigation of this mystery from us. If you know something, anything, and you're withholding it from us, tell us. If you don't, and we find out later, we'll regard you as having broken your own deal, Helen negotiated. Remember one thing. If she's the same woman from her story, she betrayed the one true love of her own life. Perhaps making a deal with such a woman isn't a good idea, Valerie observed. Look, we have to start trusting until we're given indication that we can't. We can't go entirely on what happened. People change. Right, Monique? Alicia put her arm around her friend. Right you are. People do change. Most often they improve, Monique agreed. Some become worse, Valerie considered. I say that we can't assume anything about Miss Hui Van either way. We'll deal with what she's given us and deal with anything else as it happens, assuming Miss Hui Van agrees to my terms, Helen agreed. You haven't stated the second condition of your deal, Miss Hui Van reminded her.
My second condition is that regardless of whether we find the girl or not, you donate a sum of $1 million to a charity backing skills training and the entrepreneurship of young people locally, Helen suggested. I will make it $2 million, and I formally agree with Helen's deal. You are to start immediately. Thuk Bong will drive you back to the city and the Oriental Jade Hotel, where you'll rendezvous with your peers, Miss Hui Van suggested to them. That sounds like a plan. I can agree to that too. Valerie joined them, and the 4 of them were united.